So Archbishop Vigano was on Steve Bannon's War Room the other day. And he talked about a lot of stuff. But one of the things they talked about was the likelihood of success for the Great Reset. Now, if you don't know what the Great Reset is, well, I suggest you look that up. We're not going to go into the details of it right here. But in general, the Great Reset is basically a sort of science fiction-y socialist dream to create a world that is a new normal, and you'll own nothing and be happy, and you'll eat bugs and all those crazy things. So Vigano basically said that the way that the Great Reset is set up, it is doomed to end in failure. These are his words. I'll link the article in the description. You can see the actual quotes. This is something that I've been saying for a while. And actually, a few months ago, maybe 7-8 months ago, it was, at least 7, 8, 9 months ago, I was on a popular Catholic YouTube show saying that I believe the Great Reset was basically a LARP. And what is a LARP? A LARP is a live action role playing, which basically means, it's not real. They're kind of pretending that there's something that they're not. There's nothing wrong with playing make-believe when you're at a Renaissance fair or something like that. But it's one thing to sort of play make-believe. It's another thing to think you can actually make those things happen. When you actually read through the goals of the Great Reset crowd, you find things that are scientifically impossible. There is no possible way to hack human beings the way they suggest it. The things that they think they can do with medicines to change your DNA, that sort of stuff, it's not a thing. Even this idea that you could instantiate a completely accepted global digital currency, the technology and infrastructure and cooperation across international boundaries, jurisdictions, it's the stuff of science fiction. It doesn't mean that they're not going to try. It doesn't mean that there aren't terrible things that can result from the ideas of terrible people. I'm not saying that. But it is a highly speculative endeavor. And I think during the last 2 years, in this hypnosis that everyone's been under, both leftists and right-wingers and so forth, because of, this whole virus situation that's been going on, you've probably heard of it. I think we've been really freaked out. I think, it's been very easy for people on all sides of the aisle, all sides of the equation, to sort of think about the potential risks of illnesses and medications and governments and stuff. And it's caused us to give credence to this Great Reset agenda, when I've been arguing for actually almost a year now. When I think back to when I first started coming public with these opinions, I think we've given too much credence to the Great Reset agenda. Now, again, it's perfectly understandable that we would be worried about some sort of takeover by crazy, megalomaniac, egomaniacal, crazy people like Klaus Schwab, of course. But I'm really happy that Bishop Vigano has come out and said that the Great Reset is doomed to fail, because it is. I say this a lot to people. Yes, do we live in an Orwellian time, in the sense that it's like George Orwell's 1984? Sure. Do we live in a time that really sort of looks like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World? Of course it does. But we should be not just reading these dystopian novels by these ultimately sort of atheist or secular-minded authors. We should be looking to the great works of literature from Christian authors and even the great pagans of the time of the Greek tragedies and things like that. And what you find when you read the Greek myths and you read Shakespeare and so forth, where they have a supernatural worldview, it's impossible for sins to not come back and haunt you. You see this quite clearly with Hamlet, for example, with ghosts. You see this with Macbeth, where he basically makes a deal with the devil and causes him to basically fall into a fit of despair and suicidal ideation. You see this with the story of Achilles, and basically adultery in that story with Hector and Troy and so forth. It leads to the downfall of a civilization. We are living in an Orwellian time, in a sense. But Orwell had no concept of the supernatural. Orwell had no concept of grace. Orwell wrote that book as if the atheistic communists would have an unyielding resolve to never relent and to never lose their focus in a way where they could implement some sort of global takeover with perfect loyalty and adherence to a plan. The thing is, no one could do that. That requires some sort of supernatural virtue that nobody has. And especially our crop of political morons do not have that. They might be evil, they might be shrewd, they might be manipulative. As much as they are morons, they're actually kind of intelligent. But they are not supervillains that have unyielding, perfect obedience to a plan without any possibility of their sins or folly coming back to haunt them. And I think Archbishop Vigano, as he illuminates that there's this doom involved in the Great Reset that will lead to its failure, I think he does a good job by explaining that really it's going to be the Christian family that's going to do it. And this is always the case. You know, look around at the birth rates of our societies. You know, has the sexual revolution, has it been a terrible thing for society? Yeah, but guess what? The sexual revolution is contracepting itself out of existence. Things look crazy right now, don't get me wrong. I mean, goodness gracious, the drag queen story hours and all this kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, things are really nuts right now. But they're this absurd because they're nearing their logical end, which is basically to become so insane and almost cannibalistic that they make themselves almost go out of existence. I mean, there will be no leftists in a number of years from now, in the sense of them being a majority, because they don't breed. You know, there will be no adherence to the Great Reset left in a number of years because they're old. They're of an older generation who are sort of the hangover. I mean, the George Soros, the Klaus Schwabs of the world, they're in their 80s. You know, they're of this class that, you know, sort of like the Vatican II class, where they believe they could bring about a new springtime and they just don't realize that it's never happened. This doesn't mean things are going to get perfect overnight. But I really do appreciate what Bishop Vigano said about the Great Reset being doomed to fail. And I like how in the interview he talked about how basically the Christian family is the solution, because against all odds, no matter the economy, no matter the political situation, when a family embraces the faith and raises their kids properly and they're, you know, open to life, that will change society for the better in a way that no social program could ever dream of. So thank you, bravo to Bishop Vigano for saying something that needs to be said, and I'm glad that somebody else besides myself is saying it. The Great Reset is doomed to fail, and not that we should give up and, you know, say we've won the battle, but it is doomed to fail because ultimately God will win in the end. So thank you, Bishop Vigano. This has been the Kennedy Report. Until next time, God bless.